Hello, and thank you for watching my video. This is a video that's going to be talking about Heart of Thorns, the expansion for Guild Wars 2, and it's following up a video I did yesterday where I talked about whether or not the option to pre-purchase Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns was actually worth the money, because there's been a lot of uproar, particularly if you look on the Reddit community, of just the amount of money that it's going to be costing players to actually buy the expansion. And there's a lot of different things thrown in there, and a lot of people aren't happy. So why aren't people happy with the price the price that ArenaNet are offering, considering that no one really batted an eyelid, if I remember correctly, when Guild Wars 2 was announced? No one really complained or made issue with the price. And I wanted to make a video that's, talking about what us as the player base, what we would expect from an expansion for Guild Wars 2. So, let's talk about, firstly, the maps in Guild Wars 2. Currently, for Guild Wars 2, we actually have 25 maps. So if I actually bring up the map system here, you can see I'm on my main character, or I'm one of my warriors, and it's divided into regions. So you have Kryta, you have the Tarnished Coast, you've got the Shiver Peaks, Ascalon, the Steepster Mountains, Ruins of Ore. And all of these maps, now I'm not including Southern Cove or the Silver Waste or Dry Top, I'm talking about the original maps that were in with Guild Wars 2 on launch back in 2012. There were 25 explorable maps, plus 6 cities: Lion's Arch, Black Citadel, Holbrook, The Grove, Ratasum, and Divinity's Reach. That is a lot of content. This is a lot of content. It took me a long time to explore all of this, and to even get 100% map completion, we're talking it took me 6 months before I even got 100%, and that was, well, the only character I've actually had for a long time. That was because that was my main character, and I was going around, and I actually enjoyed it. I enjoyed going around to all these different maps. And one of the things that ArenaNet have been pretty cautious to, I mean, if you look at some of these other maps like the Iron Marches, Fields of Ruin in particular, Dreadchaunt Cliffs, they aren't really very populated. And if you compare that to, for example, Dry Top or the Silver Wastes, they're extremely well, populated maps. And that's because they've got new content and a higher level content. I mean, even Frostgorge Sound is relatively quiet these days, because when they remove the champ farm from the map. So the maps we've got in Guild Wars 2, surely we should expect the equivalent in Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns. Not a chance. Okay, we're nowhere near going to get 25 maps. Frankly, they want to obviously put maps in this part here, the Maguma Wastes. They might have some in the Maguma Falls. I think that they've moved down Ratasum. I expect we've got a map there. Potentially, we could have at least 6 maps. I think they've got enough space for 6, but I mean, if you look at Brisbane Wildlands and compare that to Dry Top and the Silver Waste, those Silver Waste and Dry Top should be one map compared to Brisbane Wildlands, but they're not. Even Kessex Hills, I mean, look, it's about half the size, Dry Top and the Silver Waste, of Kessex Hills. And I think the way ArenaNet have thought about this, they think, okay, we've got all these maps over here, we spend a lot of time, and players barely spend time in them. Well, we created Silver Waste and Dry Top, and players are always in there. So they're trying to create maps that always are have a lot of events going on that keeps players coming back to them. And I can see the strategy of that, but after a while it gets boring. I like having the variation of all these different maps. It's nice to go back to these maps and go, I always find sort of new little things that I've never explored before. And I'm in almost 3 years into the game, and I'm still finding the little nooks and crannies that I've never found before. So the maps is a big issue into why the players are pretty upset about the cost of it. If we were going to get 10 maps or 15 maps, no problem with the price at all. Okay, I will take that. But this is an expansion. This isn't a brand new game. This is only going to be an extension onto the maps. Obviously, we've got the 3 biomes that they've talked about, 3 different levels of each map. So if they do have, let's say, 6 maps, they could interpret that as 18 new maps, but we'll have to see on that. Dungeons. Currently in Guild Wars 2, as you can see here, we have several dungeons. We have Uproar, we have the Crucible of Eternity, Sorrow's Embrace, Ascalon Catacombs, the Citadel of Flame, Honor of the Waves, the Caudicus' Manor, and Twilight Arbor. So, out of these dungeons, they haven't changed since launch. Okay, I apologize. Twilight Arbor has changed, and they actually gave it, sort of took one of the paths out and changed it. I mean, some of the actual layout of it has not really changed, but like the mechanics of some of the AI in there have changed. So they have neglected this. Admittedly, they did bring in Fractals of the Mists, but again, that's really been pretty neglected, considering that they've said that they were going to keep adding new content, and the only content that they've added is stuff that was in the living world. I mean, the fractals that they brought in, a lot of them we did in the living world season 1, and they thought, okay, we'll bring them back somehow. So they have not really generated too much new content for that regard, and there's been no mention of new dungeons. I think there's been a mention of new fractals, but no mention of new dungeons. And I would like there to be at least 3 new dungeons in here. You know, a minimum of 2, surely. But there's been no information about the dungeons, and that's just a bit strange to me. Challenging group content. A big point for a lot of players at the moment. What is challenging group content? Okay, so let's look at what we have. Challenging group content would be fighting Tequatl in Sparkfly Fen, or the Triple Trouble Jungle Worm in Bloodtide Coast. Now, those are the challenging group content. You would also probably include level 50 fractals, because it is a little bit challenging, although it's only 5 players. So it depends on whether you mean instant challenging group content or living, or sort of in the world group content. And really, Triple Trouble they brought in after doing Tequatl, and I think Tequatl is, you know, Tequatl and Triple Trouble are challenging group content, but that's the only thing they have in the game. You know, I wouldn't call the Silver Wastes challenging group content. It really isn't. It's not too difficult. I mean, Tequatl now isn't too difficult. However, I have failed it maybe twice the past month because I've arrived late and I've gone into an unorganized map. If it's organized, it's relatively straightforward, which, you know, Triple Trouble is a very difficult map even when organized. So are we likely to get a lot more challenging group content? They say they are. We'll have to see. Obviously there's the news about having a raid designer. Whether they'll have that in time for the release, I don't know. PvP maps. Why have PvP only ever had one new map created, and that was Skyhammer? They've only, well, I mean, they had Courtyard as well, but that's a deathmatch. They're bringing in the new game type, Stronghold, but it's going to be the only map they have. Are they going to bring in other Stronghold maps? Remember, the actual name of the map is Dawn of Champions Dusk, I think, or Champion of Dawns. I'm not too sure the map. That's how bad it is. I only know it as Stronghold, and I don't see why they've not brought out maybe a second map. But how long before they're going to bring out a second map? But at least, you know, Stronghold, it's a new game type. It looks pretty strong. I'm happy for that to be in Heart of Thorns. I've played the betas and I really enjoyed playing Stronghold. World versus World. Well, you know, as a player that doesn't really play World versus World, I know that there's a lot of disappointment in how it is at the moment. Will the new Borderland change that? Maybe initially it would. It will give people a lot more, you know, impetus to get into World versus World and be, whoa, this is a new area, let's see all the different strategies. And it will take a while for people to get used to that. And I find that a nice, interesting sort of introduction. But the Edge of the Mist was designed to test new content for World vs. World, and it hasn't been like that. There's been nothing tested in Edge of the Mists. It's been a real disappointment. Hopefully with Heart of Thorns they'll bring in some new different World vs. World siege mechanics, and it just to improve the level of World vs. World out there. Again, as a player, what we're expecting from an expansion: new skins, bringing in new armors, new weapons. We are going to get new legendaries, but not all of them at once. They're going to take time to bring them all in because the precursor scavenger hunts are such a big deal now. But yeah, new armor pieces. Obviously, we've got new gliders and new back pieces. They're all going to be, gem store items, but just things to go for. New ascended weapons, maybe new ascended crafting for jeweler and cooking. There's just these things that players do want to see in the game, but they're not coming. We don't know what's happening with the dueling. And ascended materials, we that's it. We know ascended's going to still be the top tier, but there's no new mention of different stats. We've got the sinister stat set, along with a few others that have come into the game, but there's been no information on any new stat sets coming in. Emotes are something that everyone likes doing. So we can see here, I'm on my character. Let's do a little dance, okay? So you can do, if I can spell it correctly, this is a little dance. You can see here I'm dancing away. I can cheer, but we have significantly less emotes than we had in Guild Wars 1. We had so many, and I just don't understand. They've not given us any new emotes since launch. Why? It's not exactly like a hard thing to do. It's an animation, okay? You look at Wave, for example. How hard is it to do this? It really isn't. In Guild Wars 1, we had we have many different ones, particularly Raw, or if you go into the Halloween event where you had to copy and do play Simon Says with the King. We don't get that as many different choices in Guild Wars 2, and it's pretty disappointing, to be honest. I would like ArenaNet to introduce a lot more emotes. It's just more fun. It's not really to do with the game. It's not something that would take a long time. Admittedly, you would have to do it for 5 different races, and perhaps 10 because of the different sexes. But in general, it shouldn't be too much effort to create something. I've had a friend who worked when I was at university. He worked in animation, and it took a long time to animate something just by himself. But with a group of pretty proficient animators at ArenaNet, it shouldn't take too long to come up with some interesting, cool little emotes. Maybe like a search emote where he puts his hand over his head and he looks around for something. Just some cool little emotes, or even have a competition to create. Say, okay, please come up with some ideas for emotes you want to see in game, and generate that community that Guild Wars 2 has. Guild halls, obviously, this is one thing that they are bringing in, and it's been a big request. It's looking pretty good, actually. The Guild hall system, it's looking a lot more polished than the Guild Wars 1 Guild hall system. We'll have to see how that obviously progresses. I haven't played and seen the guild halls. We've only seen the trailers for it at this time. But I think guild halls could be much more important than in Guild Wars 1. But for me, my biggest concern and my biggest hope, I guess you'd say, for Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns is the story. Now, I love playing the story. I love playing the story in Guild Wars 1 Prophecies, Factions, Nightfall, Eye of the North, and in Guild Wars 2. Even if you go back to Guild Wars 1 and you talk about, they had a sort of living world, which was the Crichton Civil War, and then we had the Winds of Change. They were really interesting stories. I liked playing that. Okay, maybe they weren't the best written stories, or, it wasn't up to everyone's standards, but for me, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the story of Guild Wars 2. Admittedly, maybe not as much as Guild Wars 1, but in general, I enjoyed playing the story mode, the personal story of Guild Wars 1. I enjoyed playing the personal story, the Living World, Season 1 and Season 2. I enjoy playing it. And I'm hoping that we can enjoy the story for Heart of Thorns. I mean, if you compare it to Guild Wars 2, the story, there were a lot of issues with it, and I think that they now have a very good base to actually start the Heart of Thorns story, and I'm hoping that they can carry that on and really give us a story that's, in-depth, it involves our character a lot, and is generally enjoyable to play. I'm hoping it's quite long in length. I don't want to complete this after, within a week. I'm hoping there are some time-gated, things that mean that we actually have to get masteries before we can progress. Because I don't want to finish it in a week. I want to take time. I want to actually enjoy playing it through. I don't want to have to rush through everything. I want to enjoy and watch the cutscenes. That's what I love, and that's what I loved in Guild Wars 1. And I hope that ArenaNet have decided, they've acknowledged they made some mistakes in the story of Guild Wars 2, particularly those cutscenes. And I'm hoping that they've taken what they've learned from the Living World Season 2 and implement a better and more polished story for Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns. So for me, this is what, as a player, I would expect from an expansion of Heart of Thorns. Are we likely to get all of these? No. And that is where the crux of the issue is. A lot of players aren't happy that the fact that their hopes for an expansion and what they'd expect from an expansion compared to obviously what they paid full price for the Guild Wars 2 game, they're not going to be getting that with the expansion. The expansion is going to be very, very feature heavy. We're getting masteries, we're getting new specializations. They're changing a lot on the combat system. A lot of these are features of the actual game that they're changing. It's not content. And that, I think, is where that they're struggling to justify the price at the moment. And I'm probably not going to pre-purchase it. I don't see the point. I did pre-purchase Guild Wars 2. I didn't get the 3-day head start beta because I didn't really see the point in that. But I am a big Guild Wars 2 fan. I respect all the work that ArenaNet have gone into doing this, but I still feel that they are a little bit, that they need to improve their communication skills. They have obviously made a mistake to do, the way that they've announced this, to do the pricing structure, and there are ways that they can go about managing this, but it's a question of whether they want to, or whether they'll just let their player base rage for a little bit while knowing full well that many players are going to buy this anyway. So that are my thoughts on this. I know a lot of people have been stating that there are a lot of YouTubers that actually link to buying the Heart of Thorns game. You will actually find I don't have anything. You can't go through anywhere to buy the game for me. It supports my channel. I don't have any problem with YouTubers doing that, because obviously we all, as a player and a YouTuber, we appreciate the fact that ArenaNet allows us to talk about all this content, and show this off, and we get money from this. But at the same time, we still can criticize ArenaNet for doing things wrong, or if the game's lacking. And I'm hoping that you guys will take a balanced view. I try to take a little balanced view. I know this has gone into a bit of a rant, but I like to say that ArenaNet do a fantastic job with a lot of content. I've enjoyed a lot. The amount of hours playing this game. Guild Wars 2 is my favourite ever game, and I respect them for that immensely. But I don't think they're a perfect company, and there are ways that they can continue to improve. And I'm hoping that a lot of players would agree with me on this. Anyway, that is my 2 cents on the matter. If you want to feel free to comment, and I will catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.